Hey everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Rock and Roll Experience with Mick Brown. On this episode, I'm really excited to have with me legendary guitarist George Lynch. George will speak with me all about the new 30th anniversary Lynch Mob release of the classic album Wicked Sensation. He'll also talk with me a little bit about his decision to retire the name Lynch Mob and the feedback he received from people such as Don Dokken. Also, he'll share with us how Mick Brown is doing. I think this is a great episode that you guys are going to really love. I'd like to say thanks to George for spending nearly a half hour with me talking about everything going on in the world of George Lynch, including some exciting new releases he's going to be working on. Thanks a lot, George. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock and Roll Experience with Mick Brown, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. Now, without further ado, let's get started with my conversation with the one, the only, Mr. George Lynch. So let's just jump in and talk Wicked Sensation Reimagined, right? 30th anniversary edition coming out this Friday, August 28th. You happy with how it turns out?
Yes, sir. I'm actually, it was much happier with it than I expected to be when we entered into the ideas of taking it on, taking this project on and having fun with the original record and rewriting it and so forth. It's just a kind of a gamble. You sort of throw in the dice because you don't really know what's going to happen. It's done pretty, it was done pretty quickly. Sort of off the cuff, shooting from the hip, so to speak. So it just sort of gained a life of its own during the process. One thing that was different about this record than a lot of the other records I've been working on in recent times is that the band was all actually together.
Oh, wow.
At the same time, which, sounds like would be a normal thing to do, but isn't normal anymore.
Right.
Not just from COVID and the pandemic, but as a result of the pandemic, but also just for logistical reasons. A lot of times, and most times actually, that I do records, I'm not working in a studio with the rest of the band all at the same time. That just doesn't happen anymore for a lot of different reasons. Economic reasons, logistical reasons, things like that. So, that it was really kind of like old school. We were all in the studio together in various studios, working back and forth, hanging out, having a good time, and it really shows on the record, I think.
That's awesome. Now, obviously, Ani Logan's back on this one with lead vocals. When you guys first started talking about this, and he sounds great. It's hard to believe it's 30 years later. But when you first started talking about this, was there any hesitation on his part that, hey, I got to sing these parts that I did 30 years ago that are timeless and ageless? Was there any concern on his part?
Yeah, I'm sure there was. I mean, but I think what really helped the process and was that everybody was relaxed.
Yep.
And it wasn't like the first record, Wicked Sensation, where we had a boatload of money and all these heavy hitters behind us and all these different studios, and it was just a lot of pressure. It was a pressure cooker, really.
Sure.
And everybody was under pressure to perform and deliver. Intense pressure. So not a lot of people respond well to that. Some people do, but in our case, and especially Oni's case, didn't respond well to that. But we did this record in a completely opposite way. It was just four friends hanging out. There was no producer. There was no big intimidating studio, and it was just relaxed, and we were, we had a few beers, and we'd order food in, and we were just joking around a lot of the time and just having fun with the songs.
Absolutely.
And exploring and different ideas, and everything was just very exciting and fun, and so it was a happy time, and it was a very constructive time, but without being the intensity wasn't the negative.
Right, absolutely.
Very positive intensity, and that's where I think people do their best work. At least we did. He was relaxed, or he was relaxed, and he just did what comes naturally to him.
Absolutely. And you've also mentioned it was the four of you guys hanging out. So it's Robbie Crane on bass, I believe, and Brian Tishy on drums, right? Who played with you on and off for the past 10 years. So I'm sure having that relationship with those guys for the last decade has helped as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was really our last hurrah and our swan song. We didn't know it because we didn't know that the pandemic was going to shut everything down.
Sure.
And we had just been coming off some dates earlier in the year, and we had another year and a half of 30th anniversary dates lined up. A lot of touring, most touring I've probably done in as long as I can remember, scheduled and planned for the rest of this year and into next year. And we thought, well, we better get in and do this record before we have to take off again, because we're not going to get another chance to do this.
Right.
And we have, a short amount of time to be able to knock it out. We had a window of opportunity, and we went in and we knocked it out. Yep. During the process, everything shut down. That was the end of that.
Yep.
And, band members sort of scattered to the four corners, and at that point, I just thought, well, I think this is really a good time to maybe get out and put tie a bow on it, send it off into the sunset.
Absolutely. Now, you just mentioned that you did a couple of shows earlier in the year. I think you got to do, it was like 2 or 3 shows playing with Dokken, right? Like you said, you billed it as the 30th anniversary shows. Any chance that will continue in 2021, or has that ship sailed, that tour?
Well, there are still some shows on the books, but that version of the band is no longer intact. So I just, I'm keeping an open mind and trying to remain positive, like the rest of us, my musician friends and fans out there. They're hoping it'll come back, but I don't really see much of anything happening until at least mid-2021.
Sure.
But there are a few things that might happen. There are a couple of things that might happen between now and the end of the year that are still on the books.
Okay.
But those dates are outdoors, and social distancing and masks required and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So they're relatively safe musical events, although those are the highest risk, one of the highest risk things that you can participate in. The way these are being run is I think being run as safely as you can run them, short of everybody wearing bubble suits or something. Right.
And you just did a show last week, didn't you?
I did a week residency at Sturgis.
Right. Okay. And how did that go?
Well, it was a mixed bag. I mean, it was wonderful to get on stage and play again. That was fantastic, and it was actually very well attended. There was 500,000 people there, which is good and bad. But I played it really safe. I have this Mercedes Sprinter conversion 4-wheel drive solar adventure vehicle that I used to go camping with and things like that. And I drove that up there and brought my little portable, I have a little mobile recording setup on a laptop, and I just camped out the whole way. I brought my own food, I had my own bathroom. I took secondary roads. I camped out every night. And when I got up there, I just stayed to myself. I didn't see anybody. I just would drive my vehicle up to the side of the outdoor stage, and there was nobody allowed backstage. I wore my mask up to the stage. My tech would hand me my guitar cord after he sanitized everything down. And crowd barrier was up. There wasn't anybody allowed on stage, as I said, and I'd play for an hour and get back in my sprint and go back, become a ghost and go back up into the Black Hills and wait. I did that 5 days in a row, and then I took 4 days to drive up, 4 days to drive back, camped along the way, and as I said, stayed off the interstates and stayed away from travel centers, didn't eat at restaurants. The only time I really stopped to do anything was to fuel up.
Right. Wow.
I'd club up and wear a mask and.
Sounds crazy, but I'm sure it was fun to be on stage again.
It was the road trip was fun, the camping was fun, and being on stage was fun.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, all that was positive. I'm just hoping that we don't see a surge in cases as a result of that.
Of course.
Those people getting together, but we'll see.
Fingers crossed. So going back to the album, right? So I know it's usually common that artists will do quote unquote like deluxe editions that'll have usually like the original album remastered plus demos, live recordings. You know what I'm talking about with these deluxe editions. You obviously decided to go a different direction, and you've been very open about saying this is not meant to replace the original, right? So why do you choose to go this direction instead of what I'll call the industry standard of what a deluxe edition usually is?
Well, the one thing that I'm going to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
I read on some blogs and some different comments that people had here and there.
Mm-hmm.
It was pointed out to me that people were accusing me and the band of a quote unquote money grab, and that really hit a nerve with me because I would love for people to be able to look at this deal from the inside of a cow kind of perspective, because this was anything but a money grab. Believe me, there was very little money involved in this record. This was not done for that. There's no way that anybody could accuse us of that.
Right.
It was done purely out of love and passion and a desire and to be creative and have fun with the first Lynch Mob record and put a nice bookend to our career and say, okay, this is how we started, this is how we're ending. Good night.
Right.
That was the sole idea in doing it. Period. There wasn't much money for anybody in this.
Yeah.
So the money grab thing is absolutely ridiculous, and I wouldn't want anybody to ever think that. That would be untrue.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. A money grab would be just remastering the album, putting the same exact album back out.
Right.
That's the money grab.
What you're saying is pointing out the traditional method that people go with, or the remaster, which doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
Maybe makes the record worse, I guess. I don't know. I mean, we did $25,000 mastering back in the day at Sterling or Bob Ludwig. Well, why would we remaster it?
Right.
And you really couldn't get a better mix out of it. So, I mean, all those kinds of things are silly. I mean, those are just marketing ploys.
Sure.
That would be a disingenuous re-release, I think. There's no point in that. That is a money grab.
Right.
What we did was, I think, something very creatively astute and honorable and genuinely, within our right to do. And we're not, as I said, replacing anything. We're just saying, okay, well, here's something that we put, a record that we took 1.5 years to make and $500,000 and dedicated a portion of our lives to creating. And it's propelled the career of this band. It's been our largest selling record to date. Seemed to have stood the test of time, and still a somewhat historically significant record, for its era, for that genre of music. And now 30 years later, what more fitting act could be made than to sort of, take another stab at it and see how we interpret it 30 years later.
Absolutely.
I think that's very interesting. I can't imagine how anybody would have anything bad to say about that.
Right. No, agreed.
It just blows my mind. I mean, we're not replacing anything. We're just adding another interpretation to it, which is really interesting to listen to, at least from my standpoint. I'm listening to it and going, wow. Oh,
absolutely.
This is really cool.
Yeah, there were songs like Dance of the Dogs and Street Fighter Man. I thought those two stood out to me. I was like, these are interesting. I like these. Were there any favorites that you had when you were re-recording that you said, hey, I really like this new version a lot?
By far, Hellchild. Yeah.
Okay. What about it that you liked?
It's so radically different, and it's so energized. It borders on punk.
Yep.
Which is, just it's and the intensity is wonderful. So where the original is sort of this dirgy kind of dark thing, which I like too. Of course, it's really cool. But I think I prefer listening to the songs that are more different than the original. Sure. And a few of the songs we kept things generally the same, the arrangements generally the same, the tempo's the same, and so forth. Just replayed them with a different sound and more simply. We didn't add all the production and everything. Yep. And that's nice, but what really is more interesting, another level to me, is when we really reinvented the songs.
Absolutely. And to me, like something like Through These Eyes was really cool because you turned it into like this, I'll call it beautiful acoustic song, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, which took me all of 10 minutes.
That's great. That's great.
Sat in my studio, and it was just an afterthought, and the engineer was like, well, what do you want to do? I go, well, I don't know. We were kind of looking at the wall, all the different guitars and amps, and I go, well, how about just this, I don't want to seem too obvious here, but what about just a straight acoustic version? I mean, we really haven't done that.
Right.
I mean, I don't want to sound intellectually lazy or anything, but I'm just like, well, maybe the obvious is the best thing to do. Occam's razor, just, just let's do something that's we don't have to think too hard about.
Absolutely.
And let the song do the work. It's a beautiful song.
Yeah.
And don't cover it up with extra production and tricks and fancy stuff. Just if a good song's a good song, it's a good song around a campfire with an acoustic guitar.
Well said. I agree 100%. As you were doing these, was there any concern on your part? Like you said, this was your best-selling album with Lynch Mob. You have classics like Wicked Sensation, River of Love on this. Was there any concern on your part that maybe some fans would be like, not embrace these new versions, or did you not get concerned about that as you were doing it? Did you think about the fans' reactions at all during this?
I never. The thought really didn't enter my mind. I didn't have a problem with it.
Right.
So
okay.
Having a problem with it.
Right.
That's just. I really don't. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't think people are understanding the very understandable distinction between replacing something and just augmenting something.
Yep.
I mean, this is just a version. The other version, the original version, is never going to go away.
Absolutely.
You can listen to it all. You can not listen to this if you want. It's just it's your discretion if you want to enjoy it. If you enjoy it, and like you do, you don't enjoy it and ignore it.
Yeah, and I think both of them could be enjoyed equally. To me, the original has a very like late 80s, early 90s sound, which I love. I mean, that's the music I grew up with. I love that sound. This sound was a little bit more, I'll call it current, a little bit more timeless, a little bit not to a specific era. It just sounds like something you could put on and listen to now, 10 years, 20 years from now. So to me, you can enjoy both of them. There's no reason to choose one over the other.
Yeah, I think here's the main distinction, I think. I think the original was a product of its time, of its era, and where we were at that point in time. And this version is has a much longer, more mature view. It's really more of a reflection of all of our influences over all the decades that we've been musicians and learning and listening to the music we grew up with and throughout our careers. So as you mentioned, all that's reflected in this unconsciously. It's not like we decided, let's make it sound 70s, let's make it,
Right.
We just, that's the music we have, that we grew up with and we continue to listen to, and it influences us greatly. And, being a musician is a constant learning process throughout your life and on many different levels. And that's what we applied to this record.
Yep. Yep. To me, that shows. You've mentioned a few times during our chat here that this is like a bookend to Lynch Mob, and I know a few weeks ago you actually made an announcement that you're going to retire the band name Lynch Mob. So have you seen any of the reactions from people? I know people like Michael Sweet and Don Dokken have said, but that's his name. He shouldn't have to retire that band name. That's his last name. Have you seen the reactions, and what were your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, actually spoke to Don yesterday at length, and that was one of the things we discussed. And I appreciate people coming to my, side on this and supporting that idea of rationalizing it in that way. But I honestly don't share their opinion about it, even though I appreciate it. I have absolutely zero problem with letting the name go, and I don't want to sound like, I don't want to sound disingenuous here, but listen, I'm not a dumb person, and I understand the problems with the name, and I have, and it's only accelerated over time. It's just that recently there's been this confluence and triangulation of events that have really culminated in and made it much easier for me. In fact, it's almost impossible for me not to change it. And that's not really, and it's somewhat, the pressure of everything that's going on in the world right now. Sure, there's that. But there's also the idea that, the band just finished redoing Lynch Mob. The pandemic hit, which killed all our touring, which basically killed the band for the foreseeable future. I'm going 66 years old. I'm thinking, well, I've done 12 records with this band. Band sort of scattered to the wind again. I really can't seem to keep a lineup together to save my life. So I'm like, well, I've got at least a half a dozen other very valid projects that keep me busy.
Yep.
And the only thing that really differentiated Lynch Mob from the rest of those projects was Lynch Mob was a touring entity.
Sure. Now
that the touring is over for the foreseeable future, I didn't really see any reason keeping it going. That's quite honestly the reason behind it. And so it's not so much that I lost the name, it's just I just lost the band. And along with the band, I'm not going to be doing any more Lynch Mob records, let's put it that way.
Right.
It doesn't mean I wouldn't be playing with some of these musicians, doesn't mean I wouldn't be playing the same kind of music. It's just still me writing music and playing my guitar.
Yep.
Absolutely. Doesn't have that name.
So I know on the original recordings, Mick Brown, the drummer from Dokken as well, was with you on that. And I know he left Dokken last year for health reasons. And from what I hear, people haven't heard from him. Do you know anything about his health and how he's doing?
Well, I heard he's doing great,
mentally
and physically, and he looks great because he's rested now. This is just second-hand information.
Okay.
But he is, I've had very, very little contact with him. I know he hasn't contacted anyone else that I've spoken to that know him either. He's just got to the point where he just decided that I'm cutting myself off from that life.
Sure.
I've played drums, sold his drum sets. Not really a drummer anymore.
Right.
And I heard he's healed up and doing well. And when I say healed up, I mean it's drumming, especially the way he drums, is his age is a hard physical thing to do.
Sure.
And on top of that, the traveling, which I don't want to sound like I'm complaining because there's people out there with much harder physical jobs than getting on a plane.
But it's hard being on the road all the time.
It does. It is a thing that beats you up,
Absolutely.
Especially when you get older. So you just get drugged around the country, and it's tough. And I always, quite honestly, I grew up with a work ethic. Work is love. Absolutely. And everybody in my family is to this day are just hard workers. That's the way our father raised us, and that's all we know. And we really can't be anything but that. And so we decided to have a certain amount of pride in that. But I don't think we ever learned the lesson that you can work smarter, not harder.
Sure. That's funny.
With the touring, sometimes you've got to be in the next city in 13 hours. So you have to jump off stage, get into the vehicle, load all your equipment, and drive all night and get to sound check the next day and hopefully catch a few hours sleep, maybe a shower if you're lucky, and jump on stage again, do it all again, do that 13 times in a row.
Sure.
Stuff like that. I mean, that's stuff that I've done up until recently.
Absolutely.
And that'll kill you. It really will, driving tired and it's demoralizing and all this kind of stuff. Once you get on stage, of course, for your 2 hours on stage, everything's right in the world, it's wonderful, and you forget about time and space, and you go in deep, and you play, and you're happy, and it's beautiful.
Right.
And then back to reality again, and it's rough. And so, quite honestly, I can definitely identify. I'm sure many musicians can identify with Mick.
Yeah.
And,
look, I could only compare it to when I was 25. I got married and was on a 14-day honeymoon, and I couldn't wait to get home after 14 days. So I could only imagine years on the road. At some point, as you get older, I could totally understand that point of view.
Yeah, you need a vacation from your vacation. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's next for you at this point?
Well, let's see. Well, as you mentioned, we're doing this interview, the 30th anniversary Reimagined record. This Wicked Sensation Reimagined record's coming out this Friday.
Yep.
Then I've got another record that I finished called Seamless, which is my first purely guitar instrumental record I've ever done.
Nice.
And that's going to be coming out in the fall on Rat Pack Records as well.
Nice.
And then Jeff and I and Robert Mason and Mick Brown's brother, Steve Brown, are finishing up the second End Machine record.
Very cool.
And that'll be coming out late winter, early spring next year. But actually, there's another record coming out in January on Cleopatra Records called, the project is called Heavy Hitters. And it was Jeff Pilson and I and a bunch of other guest musicians, and Brian Tichy as well.
Nice.
And what it is, it's a really interesting record and super fun record to listen to. We had a blast with it. And what it is, it's top 40 hits, again, reimagined, reinterpreted, over the last 50 years. Two top 40 hits from each decade.
That sounds really cool.
So, yeah. And so we've got all these interesting artists. We start out with this list of like 200 potential songs that we would pick from, and then we just kept whittling it down. So, the Duran song, a Madonna song, a Timbaland song, just really, really interesting. Edie Brickell, Little Richard, just a really eclectic mix of different material. That's really fascinating to me to listen to. I hope the fans agree with me on that.
No, that sounds
of course,
really
they
exciting.
might get pissed and go, "Hey, how could you possibly dishonor the original this way?" I'm like, "Oh, jeez."
No, I think that sounds very exciting. Certainly, I'll be looking for that. I'm sure your fans will as well. Now, I want to close just by letting the fans know that the album I know is available in CD. There's a double vinyl version. There's even a cassette version, which I think is really cool, right? And I think the CD's available. You'll sign copies for that, and people can go online and order those. Correct?
Yeah, everything's available for pre-order.
Awesome.
I believe. Rat Pack does a really good job of bundling a lot of different things to make it interesting for fans and collectors to, like you said, cassettes. I didn't even know.
Exactly.
I've been signing them, so I guess people are buying them, which is really funny.
Yeah, no, it's real. And the price point, I saw the CD was $22.95, I think it was. So for a signed CD, no fan could go wrong picking this up for that kind of price. I think it's a great product and a great price.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, actually, I am doing another, going to be starting between now and, sometime next year, 3 other projects.
Okay.
One is KXM4 on Rat Pack as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are 2 other possible records I could be working on later on down the road a little bit. One is a third Sweden Lynch record. And then there's a possibility that I could be doing a second Dirty Shirley record with Dino.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
So you're certainly a busy man.
Yeah, and I build my guitars. I have my Mr. Scary Guitars thing, which is going great, keeping me more than busy as well. So,
And you offer to do
Okay.
cameo videos for people as well, right?
Correct. Yeah, I was going to mention the cameos,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. Actually, Michael Sweet had hit me up about it.
Nice.
He has been doing a lot of them. And it's actually, you know, I thought first, oh, is this going to be cheesy? And I guess there's maybe a cheesy element to everything we do, you know. So,
Right.
but you know, actually, it's very heartfelt because people, you know, a lot of it's birthdays or this and that, but some people are having issues, especially, you know, what's going on right now in the world. You know, and they need some connection and some solace and just some support and maybe hear some empathy and kindness and a few nice words, and I play a little guitar for, you know, now and then, you know, on these things, you know, if I'm sitting around in my studio and I have it plugged in.
Mm-hmm.
And the feedback has been really great. You know, it brightens up people's day, and you know, it's a little side gig for all of us musicians, you know, while we're all sitting home. So it works.
Nice. Anything else, George, you want to tell your fans before we wrap this up?
I think I've plugged enough. Shameless.
Excellent. Well,
shameless self-promotion.
Thank you. I appreciate your time today. All the fans should go definitely check out the new reimagined version of the Wicked Sensation album. And I'm sure I can speak on all fans' behalf. We're excited to hear about the other projects you're working on. And thank you, George, for your time today.
Okay. We'll talk
Awesome.
again soon. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
Alrighty, there you have it. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with George Lynch as much as I did. George, I can say that I know that your fans are really excited to hear about all the new releases that are coming out. And I'd like to just say thank you once again for spending nearly a half hour with me chatting about everything that's going on in the world of George Lynch. As we discussed, Wicked Sensation Reimagined is out August 28th, so make sure you pick up a copy on vinyl, CD, and or cassette. It sounds really great. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. If you've watched this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brown, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. See you next time.